As I stood barefoot in ice-cold water, fixing the leaky water heater, I overheard my wife's laughter echoing from upstairs. "If he gets electrocuted, think of the savings on our bills," she joked. My daughter chimed in, "Can I have his phone?" While my son shouted down, "Don't die until the game is over, idiot." After finishing up and drying my feet, I felt a wave of realization wash over me. That night I packed a bag. 2 weeks later, they understood just how much those thoughtless words had cost them. Here I am, a 42-year-old man, sharing my story when I never dreamed I'd ever need to. To Tricia, my wife of 15 years, and I have built a life with our 2 kids, Sterling, 14, and Lee, 12. I always thought we were a solid family, not flawless, but strong enough to weather any storm. How little I knew. In context, I've been grinding away at a demanding job, clocking in over 60 hours each week just to keep our family afloat in these tough economic times. On top of that, I tackle heavy home repair ourselves because I've always been handy with tools. Until now, I never realized how much I was taking on, nor how unappreciated my efforts had become. In the meantime, Patricia has taken up a part-time gig at a downtown boutique. She's always maintained that a full-time position just doesn't fit her skill set, and honestly, I never had any issue with it. So when Friday night finally rolled in, exhaustion was my middle name after clocking in several hours of overtime. All I craved was a soft landing on the couch, an escape into some mindless videos, and a temporary amnesia of the world spinning around me. But then it happened at the unmistakable sound of hissing from the basement. My heart sank. I rushed downstairs only to find it, water everywhere. Our ancient water heater had decided enough was enough, unleashing a flood that was rapidly pooling on the concrete floor and inching perilously towards Sterling's prized gaming setup. If that equipment gets soaked, brace yourself for an apocalypse in our household. Clock check. 11:30 p.m. What are the odds of getting a plumber at this hour? Practically nil. Without having to pay for expensive emergency services, which are way out of our budget, I find myself doing what I always do, tackling it on my own. I start by shutting off the water main and cutting the power to the heater before grabbing my tools. The basement floor is icy cold, submerged under about an inch of frigid water. But I don't have the luxury of time to put on boots. I'm too focused on stopping the leak. So there I am, barefoot in freezing water, balancing a flashlight in my teeth, desperately trying to locate the source of the leak and patch it enough to hold until I can get the right parts tomorrow. Here's something quirky about our house. The heating vents connect the basement directly to the kitchen above in such a peculiar way that sound travels crystal clear. I've known this little secret for years now. You can hear everything, absolutely everything. So here I am, on my knees in the freezing water, utterly absorbed in this less than ideal situation. My hands throb from the chill, a numb ache settling in my fingers as I worked. Suddenly, a burst of laughter echoed from upstairs. Patricia's voice floated down through the vent, clear as day. "If he gets electrocuted down there, at least we'd save on the electric bills." I stopped in my tracks. Did I really just hear that? Before I could process, Lee, my 12-year-old, chimed in. "Can I have his phone if that happens? Mine's ancient." Sterling's voice followed from the living room, casual as ever. "Hey, Dad, don't die until I finish this game, okay?" need a ride to Jaden's tomorrow." Laughter rang out again, as if it were the funniest thing in the world to joke about me risking my life so they'd have hot water. In that moment, a wave of disbelief crashed over me. It was as if my hands were suddenly frozen, but not from the cold. I couldn't even begin to describe the feeling, a mixture of shock and hurt piercing through the chill. A wave of disbelief crashed over me, leaving my heart somewhere near my feet. After 15 years together, is this really how my family sees me? Just a joke, an inconvenience? I held my tongue, resisting the urge to storm upstairs and demand answers. Instead, I focused on the task at hand. I patched up the leak as best I could, cleaning up the water's mess and drying my feet before finally heading upstairs. There was Patricia lounging on the couch. I was glued to her TikTok feed. "All fixed?" she asked absently, not looking up. "Yeah," I replied, trying to mask the sting in my voice. "It should hold until tomorrow." "Great," she murmured, still engrossed in her screen. "Don't forget Sterling needs to be at Jaden's by noon." I nodded, acknowledging her reminder, and retreated to the shower. The warm water offered a momentary reprieve, washing away the residue of disappointment for just a while. I slipped into bed and lay there, staring blankly at the ceiling, while Patricia snored softly beside me. I have to say, making impulsive decisions isn't my style. I've always been the rock-steady, dependable, the one who mends everything without a word of complaint. But tonight, something inside me shattered. Something I fear can't be put back together. Those words kept haunting me, replaying in my mind. My wife joking about what life would be like after I'm gone. My kids seemingly more worried about their inheritances and the inconvenience of my passing than anything else. It was 3 a.m. when I finally got up. I packed a bag with just the essentials, retrieved the important documents from the fireproof safe, and took half of the cash from our emergency fund. I counted it twice, making sure I took only my share. I left my house keys and garage opener on the kitchen counter, scribbling a brief note before heading out. It simply read, "Taking some time. Please don't reach out." With that, I slipped away to a modest hotel about 20 miles from home, switched off location sharing on my phone, and allowed myself to truly breathe, as if it were the first time in years. Bright and early at 7 a.m., the messages began flooding in. "Patricia, where are you? Sterling needs to be at Jaden's by noon." "Patricia, seriously? You're just leaving without a word." "Patricia, the water heater is leaking again. What do I do? Do you notice anything? Hey, are you okay? I'm starting to get really worried here. I get it, you're upset because your favorite handyman show's been taken off. But listen, I'm not sure where Mom and Dad went. I need to head over to Jaden's for the tournament. Lee, Dad, Mom's really mad. When can we expect you back?" It wasn't until after lunch, around 2 p.m., when the mood shifted. "Patricia, Robert, this isn't a joke anymore. Please come home so we can discuss whatever's on your mind." "Patricia, please say something, even if it's just to let me know you're all right." "Patricia, I'm genuinely concerned. Please, just reply to my text. I know it might be too little, too late, but I had to switch off my phone. I needed a moment to breathe, so I went down to the front desk and paid for a week's stay in advance. Then, as I sat on the bed, I let myself truly reflect on the past few years. When was the last time anyone in that house treated me with basic respect, showed genuine appreciation or offered me real love. How often have I pushed myself to the brink, working endless hours of overtime. Then, instead of resting, I stayed up past midnight fixing things around the house, while everyone else was peacefully asleep. I've lost count of the rainy games of Sterlings that I've attended, exhausted after grueling 12-hour shifts. And how many times has Patricia splurged on something extravagant for herself, while insisting we need it to cut back? Here's the truth. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done. I'm exhausted from being taken for granted. And it's time for a change. I'm done being the punchline in my own family. I've poured my heart and soul into everything, only to be met with indifference. So here I am, in a rundown hotel room with sheets that feel like sandpaper, munching on chips from a vending machine for dinner. And you know what? It feels better than staying in a place where I'm taken for granted. I have no clue what the future holds or if there's any way to save this marriage. But one thing is certain. Something's got to change. I refuse to keep being the butt of their jokes while I'm bending over backwards to solve their problems. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe it was all in jest. But sometimes jokes have a way of revealing deeper truths, don't they? Tomorrow, I plan to reach out to a buddy and see if I can crash at his place for a while. After that, I'll need to figure out my next steps. But tonight, I'm just going to soak in the silence even if the water heater's on the fritz. That quick fix I made isn't going to last very long. I can't help but wonder how they'll manage home repairs without their go-to-handyman around. Call it petty if you like. But sometimes people only understand the worth of something once it's gone. I was blown away by the response to my initial post, never anticipated it going viral. My inbox is now overflowing beyond belief. I truly appreciate all the outpouring of support, advice, and awards from so many of you. It's astonishing to feel supported by thousands of strangers online when my own family didn't have my back. It's been 2 weeks since I left. Right now, I'm staying in one of those extended stay motels, you know the type, with a kitchenette that always vaguely smells like bold microwave popcorn no matter how much you try to air it out. It's not exactly luxurious, but it's peaceful. There's no one pestering me to fix things, chauffeur them around, or foot the bill, acting like I'm expendable. Many of you have asked about my plan. To be honest, that first night I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I realized I needed some time and space to think things through. But after reflecting on your feedback and considering my next steps carefully, I knew I had to be smart about the changes I was planning to make. Here's what happened over the last 2 weeks. The first major move was calling my bank to arrange the transfer of my share of our savings into a separate account. I didn't clear out our joint accounts completely, not trying to be vindictive here. I wanted to ensure that Patricia could still cover immediate expenses, so I left enough funds for bills. Next, I took the step of canceling our joint credit cards. This wasn't out of spite, but because I was the primary account holder and needed to manage my own finances. When I called the bank, they were understanding and issued me new cards under my name alone. During this process, I discovered that Patricia had been piling up quite a balancing fact. Just last week, she spent $347 at some boutique after I had moved out, which made me question her commitment to our previous "we need to cut back" agreement. Despite everything I've continued to cover our mortgage and the kids' school expenses. However, when it comes to things like Netflix, music subscriptions, and the premium cable package, those are now Patricia's responsibility. It's been a challenging process, but I had to set these boundaries for my own well-being. Sterling's gaming subscription and Lee's dance classes, those little luxuries relied on what Patricia brought home from her part-time job. Or maybe they didn't. Who knows anymore? The texts and calls developed in a pattern I could practically plot on a chart. The first few days were a tempest of anger. How could you just up and leave? They'd ask, who do you think you are, disappearing like that? I was labeled childish and dramatic. It was just a joke, they insisted. Can't you take a joke? By days 4 through 7, the storms of fury mixed with a dizzying dose of confusion. The water heater's dead was one message. Dripping with exasperation, the emergency plumber, a necessary evil in my absence, charged an astonishing $650 for what would have been a $150 3-hour job if I'd been there. And then there was Sterling. He missed his beloved tournament because Patricia was left floundering, unable to revive his gaming PC after a power surge. Life, in every way, had become far more complicated without the usual fix-it guy around. The kitchen sink was hopelessly clogged, and the lawn had taken on a wild, overgrown look. These were just basic adulting issues that went unnoticed amidst the chaos I was quietly managing. Everything seemed to unravel around days 8 and 10 as panic set in. Patricia, my dear wife, finally discovered that one of our credit cards had been declined. This prompted her to scrutinize our bank account, only to find that all those automatic payments were no longer so automatic. The result was an avalanche of voice messages, about 27, to be exact, each escalating from screams to sobs to a forced attempt at rationality. Here's the thing about Patricia. In our 15 years of marriage, she's never had to stress about finances, not because I was keeping them from her, but more because she recoiled from anything involving numbers. Numbers stress me out, she would often say. Ironically, numbers are the backbone of adult life, as she was abruptly learning. By day 11, the situation took a dramatic turn. Patricia marched into my workplace, her anger a storm. She accused me, amidst a public scene, of financially abusing her and the kids. It was a moment of reckoning, one we both never anticipated but perhaps desperately needed. I caused quite a scene in front of everyone. Calmly, I ushered her outside and pulled out my phone. Remember how in my first post I talked about that strange vent system that carries sound so clearly? What I didn't mention is that after overhearing them that night, I had a hunch this wasn't the first time they'd spoken about me in such a way. So a few days before the water heater incident, while I was fixing another issue, I discreetly placed my old phone down there to record. I played the recording for Patricia. It wasn't just the water heater remarks. There were other gems, like Patricia telling the kids that their dad's too clueless to notice how much he spends on skincare. Sterling mocking me as a try-hard loser for actually trying to bond with him over his games. Lee and Patricia chuckling about how I believe that Father's Day gift was special. It was a mug I cherished that read "World's Best Dad." Little did I know they had picked it up at the dollar store as an afterthought. The look on her face was gratifying. First, she denied it, insisting I must have edited it somehow. Then came the classic defense. It was taken out of context. Finally, she said they were just joking around. I asked her, "Would you joke about anyone else's death like that? Is she your mother, your best friend, a coworker, or the person who holds the threads of your life together?" She didn't quite know herself. Sterling's been texting me too. Initially, it was full of classic teenage fury claims that I'm wrecking everything. His gaming rank is plummeting, the Wi-Fi's on the fritz, and I'm not around to fix it. The usual complaints, but yesterday there was a shift in his tone. Reality seems to be hitting home. Patricia told him he needs to sell his gaming rig to chip in for bills. That certainly opened his eyes. Then there are Lee's messages, which truly tug at my heartstrings. At 12, she's clearly parroting what Patricia suggests she say, but every so often, her true self peeks through, like when she asked if I remembered how to make those special Saturday pancakes, or when she wondered if I left because she forgot to load the dishwasher once too often. I've started consulting a financial advisor and have even talked to a lawyer. But for now, filing for divorce isn't on the table. That's a big leap I'm just not prepared to make right now, but I did need to explore my options. Meanwhile, Patricia has finally come to terms with the fact that she urgently needs a full-time job after 15 years of working part-time in retail. Her resume isn't exactly eye-catching in today's competitive job market. She's been venting to anyone who'll listen about how tough the job market is and how unfair it feels that she needs to shift to full-time work. During all this, I've been putting in over 60 hours a week ever since we got married. To make things even more complicated, Patricia's mom decided to step in. She somehow managed to find me at the motel, likely by tracking my credit card transactions. She started with the usual accusations, saying how dare I abandon my family, but that all changed once I played her a recording of our conversations. It's remarkable how fast her attitude shifted. Now, she's telling Patricia she should be ashamed, insisting she raised her to be better than this. I want to be clear, I have no intention of tearing my family apart. That's really not what I'm aiming for. But for years, I've been treated merely as a walking ATM and handyman, valued only for what I can provide rather than as a person with feelings. Perhaps this financial wake-up call will help them see the worth of what they've been taking for granted. Just yesterday, I had a package delivered to our house, just a couple of basic plumbing and electrical repair manuals, without any note or explanation. Sometimes I question if I'm being too harsh, but then I recall standing there, barefoot in the icy water, listening to my wife make jokes about my death, and my kids only worried about what they could inherit or how inconvenient my passing would be for them. In those moments, the doubt disappears. I'm not sure what comes next. Patricia has been reaching out, asking to meet and discuss things like adults. A part of me wants to, and yet another part isn't quite ready. There are still times when I miss them so profoundly it aches. They're my family, after all. 15 years together is significant, but I know I deserve more. Perhaps this is the wake-up call they needed. Here's my final update. If you're reading this, know it's been quite the journey. First and foremost, I appreciate all of you who sent messages to check if I'm still around. Apologies for going silent on you. I've been through a lot lately, and it's been a journey. Last time we talked, I was stuck in a sketchy extended stay, living off microwave ramen and struggling to figure out where my life was headed. It's been a month since I took a stand and left after my family made a tasteless joke about me getting electrocuted in our basement. So much has happened since then. Get comfortable, because this story's going to take a while. The day after my last update, I got a text from Patricia. She wasn't demanding this time. She was actually asking for a family meeting. She said the kids needed to see me, and that everyone had things they wanted to share. I considered ignoring it, but honestly, they're still my family. 15 years together isn't something you just throw away. So I agreed, but with conditions. I wanted to meet in a public place in neutral ground. I suggested that cozy coffee shop near the library, the one with those private corner booths perfect for real conversations. And I made it clear to Patricia that I'd be recording our conversation. Uncompromising. In light of everything that's transpired, I knew I needed to document it. She concurred. Stepping into the room, I was taken aback by the subtle yet profound change in them. It wasn't their physical appearance that caught me off guard. They hadn't morphed into new people during the past month, but the shift in their energy was undeniable. Sterling, for the first time I could remember, wasn't glued to his phone. Lee's eyes were swollen, evidence of tears shed recently, and Patricia, she seemed utterly worn out, the kind of weariness that seeps into your very bones. An all too familiar feeling for me. Reuniting with family after a month apart comes with unexpected challenges. All those practiced speeches useless. I had envisioned myself delivering a cool, detached monologue, but when the moment came, emotion gripped my throat, and I sat in silence, words eluding me. Awkward doesn't even begin to describe the moment. To my shock, Sterling broke the silence first. This was my son, Mr. Too Cool to acknowledge Dad's existence. Choosing to initiate a conversation, he started off with that classic teenage demure mumbling, avoiding eye contact and tugging at his hoodie strings nervously. But then he said something that completely caught me off guard. He told me he had tried to fix the garage door opener last week. He had watched some online tutorials and thought it would be a breeze. Instead, he ended up making it worse and even injured himself, slicing his hand open on the track, which required 5 stitches. As he showed me his bandaged hand, he admitted that he never really appreciated all the things I repaired around the house until he had to handle it himself in my absence. He confessed that he always assumed those tasks were easy and simply needed something to be valued. Then Lee stepped forward and handed me a notebook. Inside, she had compiled a list of things I do that often go unnoticed. It was filled with pages of everything from fixing wobbly chairs to so much more. Remember the little things like buying the right cereal or making sure the windows are locked before bed. These are the invisible threads that weave the fabric of our everyday lives, unnoticed until they unravel. Take Patricia, for example. She was a whirlwind of chaos wrapped in a perfectly polished exterior, always with manicured nails and every hair in place. But behind that facade was someone feeling as worn out as I did during those grueling 60-hour work weeks, depleted, shoulders drooping under the weight of it all. She had just taken on a full-time job at a local store. The hours were brutal, and the pay less than satisfying. As if that wasn't enough, she found herself juggling life's unexpected curveballs that I used to handle. First, the hot water heater gave out again. The plumber's $3,000 quote for a new one was a gut punch. Then the dishwasher chose the worst time to stop draining, and to top it all off, the internet kept dropping. Outside, the lawn was a jungle because the mower wouldn't start. In the midst of all this, Sterling's gaming PC fell victim to a nasty virus, and Lee's bike chain snapped. In those quiet moments of struggle, it's the unseen efforts that hold everything together. Yet, even as things fell apart, Patricia carried on, navigating the chaos with a silent resilience that few noticed but many benefited from. The bathroom sink dripped persistently, while the smoke detector insisted on chirping at 3 a.m. It seemed as if the list of troubles was endless, with each item a tiny stone that had collectively formed an avalanche, threatening to bury my family. I managed each issue silently, without complaint or recognition. I didn't gloat or say, "I told you so." I simply listened. When the moment came, I calmly presented my terms. A huge if loom, overuse if we were going to try to salvage this family. Everything needed to change permanently, not just for a few weeks until the storm passed. I insisted on family counseling, weekly and non-negotiable. Sterling must find a weekend job to cover his gaming expenses, and Patricia needs to maintain full-time employment. We're in this together as a partnership. This isn't a sponsorship. We set up a detailed chore schedule for everyone, and even included some basic home maintenance training for the kids. We also decided to make all financial decisions together, ensuring everything was completely transparent. Finally, we put everything in writing and signed an agreement to confirm our commitment. I braced myself for resistance, urgence, and excuses, but to my surprise, I found acceptance. Not a word of objection. In fact, it seemed like they were relieved, almost grateful, to have a structured plan and clear expectations. That was 3 months ago. I didn't rush back right away. I needed to witness real change, not just hear empty promises. So we started with counseling. We found a therapist who remained neutral yet held each of us accountable. Those initial sessions were tough. Life had a funny way of serving up uncomfortable truths. Sterling admitted, albeit with a tinge of embarrassment, that my attempts to bond over his video games had labeled me as cringe among his friends. Meanwhile, Lee revealed she had been mimicking her brother and mom, thinking it represented what a cool family should be. Then there was Patricia. She had to confront some harsh realities about how she'd treated me, how she'd taken advantage and inadvertently taught the kids to disrespect me. All the while, the household seemed to unravel bit by bit, with irritating little mishaps piling up. The breaking point came when their fridge gave out, leaving a heap of groceries to spoil. Patricia called me, not with demands, but in sheer overwhelm, tears tinging her voice. So I went over to lend a hand. Walking into that house felt surreal and strange. It was more chaotic and messy, yes, but also felt alive for the first time, like they were truly occupying the space, no longer relying on some invisible hand, in other words, me, to keep everything in order. When I arrived, Sterling was in the middle of tackling the fridge repair. Tools were scattered around him, and a YouTube tutorial paused on his tablet. He had managed to identify the Electrocuted condenser coils, but lacked the tools and expertise to handle it safely. Rather than stepping in and taking over, I chose to guide him through the process. Watching his face light up as the familiar hum of the fridge returned was more rewarding than any world's best dad mutt could ever be. Meanwhile, Lee was thriving with their chore chart. Her room was spotless, and she had even done the dishes without a reminder. These might have seemed like minor triumphs, but to us they felt monumental. Patricia, however, had undergone the most significant transformation. Working full-time had given her insight into the challenges I faced daily. She started preparing home-cooked meals again, moving away from the convenience of takeout. She also created a detailed budget spreadsheet on her laptop and even tackled fixing a leaky faucet on her own. Her growth was both inspiring and heartwarming. She didn't get it just right, but she put in the effort. 2 weeks ago, I made the move back home. This time, it wasn't to the old routine, but to a fresh start. We've laid out clear, written agreements on how things should operate, set up regular family meetings to keep everyone connected, and managed our finances both together and separately, which allows me some independence. It's far from flawless. Sterling still has those classic teenage moments, and Lee sometimes leaves her chores unfinished. Patricia and I are on a journey to rebuild trust, a process that demands patience. But the important thing is they're all really trying. Last weekend, while I was repairing the steps on the back deck, Sterling surprised me by coming out to help. He didn't need any prompting and, remarkably, didn't grumble once about missing time on his games. Instead, he held the boards and showed genuine interest, asking me questions about the work I was doing. Then, this morning, I stumbled upon a note on the kitchen counter beside my coffee mug. There's a simple note from Patricia, not a grand gesture of love or a heartfelt apology. It simply mentions that the water bill is on the desk and that she's already covered half from her account. Oh, and a quick thanks for fixing the toilet yesterday. It's a small thing, but it carries enormous meaning. Is our marriage saved? I honestly don't know. That's still to be determined, but when it comes to our family, I truly believe we might just make it through. The real lesson here wasn't just for them to see my worth. It was a reminder for me, too. It taught me to cherish myself enough to demand appreciation, to set boundaries, and to insist on respect. Often, people don't realize the value of what they have until it's gone. But sometimes they get a second chance if they're truly willing to earn it.